So we are replacing all the major wearable suspension components in this 2008 Pontiac G8 GT. Should also apply to the base and to the GXP. I got a full Moog suspension kit from Rock Auto, and we'll be replacing the control arms and the tie rod ends. And what did not come with the kit is sway bar end links. Going to be replacing those as well. New hub assembly, also Moog, Monroe struts from a Chevy Caprice cop car PPV, which is a little stiffer to handle that little bit larger car, and it's kind of similar to the GXP struts. And so once we get that done, also going to be replacing the factory coil springs with H&R lowering coil springs. It should lower the front of the car about an inch to an inch and a quarter in the back, roughly the same. And so I've already done the driver's side. The driver's side is done, and now I'm going to be doing the passenger side, and going to kind of do a step-by-step what I did and how I replaced it. And while I had it out, I had replaced this old dingy fog light with a new fog light, aftermarket fog light. They were pretty cheap. They're off of eBay. They're the same ones that the second generation Avalanche and Tahoe and Suburban 07 to 2013. It's all the same. Whatever the fog lights they use will also work for these as well. And it replaces those dingy. While I have this these plastic inserts out, I'm going to repaint them. I'm also going to repaint these and paint them black. I'm going to take the hood scoops and I'm going to also paint them like a satin black as well, just because they're like all these G8 hood scoops do. They clear coat peels and it looks bad. They break and fall off. So I'm going to try to spruce it up a little bit. I might even take these side markers off here too and paint those as well. The first thing, obviously, you've got to take the wheel off. That's just a given. There's the wheel over there. You've got to take the wheel off. You don't take the wheel off, you don't want to take the wheel off, you might as well just stop now. Also, the reason the hood is raised is because eventually I'll need to get to this bolt right there up under that little black cap so that I can remove the strut assembly. So we'll be doing a step-by-step. I'll have some action shots, but it'll be mostly a here it is now, here it is with it off. Anything that I see that needs to be addressed, I will take the point to show that. But once the wheel is removed, the next thing that I will be doing that I think is beneficial is I will be removing this plastic inner fender cover, because it really makes it a whole lot easier if it's out. It's just these little plastic clips, push clips that hold it in. If you're lucky like me, you're already missing some. Those will come out. Then there's some screws down here. There's also some little push clips up under here that need to come out as well. And then once all of that is out, then you can remove it, and it also makes getting to the back of the fog light easier as well. And then once you get all that done, then you can actually start wrenching on taking things apart, the fun stuff. And this car here, the reason I'm doing all of this is because the car is a 2008. It sits a lot. I don't drive it a whole lot. It is higher miles. It's got 146,000 miles, which really on a GM product is not terrible. So it would be a good idea to, and there's some slop in the steering wheel. It does shake a little. My sway bar end links are bad, especially here on the passenger side, and some of my control arms parts were bad on the car. Here's the ones I had already removed. This is everything I've already taken off of the car. I got new bellows also from Rock Auto. Pretty much everything comes from Rock Auto with the exception of the drop springs and the fog lights. Here's the control arm. As you can probably see, that rubber is almost completely separated from it. So that causes the car to have a shake in the steering wheel. So all of that was replaced. This is the also part of the control arm, and then the tie rods off of the steering is right here. This is one end of it. This is the other end of it right here. That was replaced. And there's the old hub assembly, which I was getting a ABS code for the sensor. There's the sensor. It is physically made into the hub, so unless there's another way around it, it looks like you've got to replace the whole hub just to fix a faulty ABS sensor, wheel speed sensor. So there might be another way around it, but I figured might as well. You can tell it's been seeping some. These are sealed units. They're not greasable anyway, just like pretty much all modern cars now. You have to replace the whole hub assembly. So that was a very long intro just to get us into where we're going to be changing out and putting this beautiful pile of fresh parts onto this car, hopefully to make it handle like new, ride hopefully better with the struts. At least it should improve the cornering and the handling. I'm not doing any other suspension mods as of right now, but that's going to be the deal, is this new stuff, new control arms, all that good stuff. Also replacing sway bar end links in the rear of the car with the drop springs. I think it will improve the car tremendously. So here we go, let's get started. And just like that, that inner fender cover is gone. It only took y'all about a second, but it took me like a couple minutes, if that. So it's gone. You can see it's a little cobwebby in here. It's Kentucky, and spiders get everywhere and make spider cobwebs literally everywhere. So here's the control arm I'm going to be replacing, the tie rod end, sway bar end link. There's the rear part of the, I guess it's called a control arm too, but all of that is being replaced. The next step will be to unbolt the caliper at the bracket, is where I did. It just made it the easiest. So it's this bolt right there, and if memory serves me correctly, it was a 17, let's see, 18. It is a 18 millimeter. So see if that'll focus in on that. Yep, 18 millimeter to remove the caliper bracket. And then we will not let it hang by the brake line. We will also remove this little support. It is mounted inside of this part of the strut that holds it together, or holds that steady, I guess. Also be removing this. This is the ABS wheel speed sensor for the front passenger side. We'll be removing. It just snaps in, and it's already out. That's already out. There's a little clip right here. We'll squeeze it from the other side, pair of needle nose, and it just pulls right out. And then once that is done, then we will unbolt this, and I will support it with a zip tie somewhere in the back. I'll loop a zip tie through here somewhere to support it and hold it up. So that will be out of the way, and then we'll start unbolting the struts and all of these ball joint right here, so that we can remove the hub. Once we remove the hub assembly, and we will be able to start to get to the control arms and everything. Alright, so we got the caliper removed. Like I said, that was the 18 millimeter bolt, and so the caliper is removed. This piece right here for the wheel, for the brake line, was extremely difficult to get off. It's plastic, and it just slides down in that groove and just kind of locks in there. But it was locked in. It was very difficult to get it out. May end up even eventually having to replace that brake line because of it. One of the little plastic tabs broke. I do want to upgrade the brakes on this eventually with some stainless braided brake lines and some Camaro Super Sport brake rotors, calipers, and all of that, because they're a little bit bigger, be a little bit better on this car. Anyhow, it's off, and so the caliper actually come off real easy, 18 mil, like I said, 30 times over, and got it hanging in the back. Famous old zip tie, doing what it's supposed to do. I've got the strut unbolted from the rotor hub assembly, and I just got the screwdriver in there holding it because I had to fight with the brake rotor just to get it off. It didn't want to come off. There's just a little bit of rust around this central part of this hub, but a little WD-40, just, you know, very easy, small amount. That way you don't get it on the rotor itself. You don't, especially if you're reusing the rotor, you do not want to get no WD-40 on that rotor. So just very carefully, a little bit of WD-40 on this piece right here, and then just, you know, very lightly, you can see, not so lightly, beat the center of this thing. And yeah, you don't want to hit the outside lip, because if you dent that, you'll make it difficult to get the rotor off. But just kind of hammer on the inside while trying to pull on the rotor some, and it will eventually start working itself off, as you can tell it already did. So to undo the strut assembly, the strut is a 21 millimeter nut on a 19-inch bolt. So once you get those off, actually have those right here, there's some washers on them, and like I said, it's a 21 millimeter nut, 19 millimeter bolt, and you want to hang on to all of this because you're going to need it again when you go to put it all back together, or like me, putting a new strut back in it. Next is, you can probably get by without doing this, but I think it's easier. It makes everything just easier to get to. It's just removing this brake shroud, 3 10 millimeter bolts, and then it just comes right off, and then you are fully exposed to everything that you need to get to in here to undo. Now you got your ball joints here, control arm bolts there, and all of that good stuff. And so that'll be what we work on next, is trying to get the hub off, and then once the hub is off, we can start replacing the other stuff. Actually, I think before I take the hub off, I think it actually is better to go ahead and remove the hub bearing assembly right now while it's still bolted to the car, because then once you get it off, you got to kind of fight with it to get off of the car. If I remember right, it is an Allen, and this is a not sure what size this Allen is. I got it as an Allen set, but you can't really read the size, but it's a metric Allen set. I got it at AutoZone, and so, but it fits down in there, and then you can crank on it, and that makes life a whole lot easier than using a regular old L-shaped Allen tool. So this size of this Allen, it is, I'm not sure, 10 millimeter. I guess it'd be a 10 millimeter Allen. So yeah, it's kind of large, but then it's only 3 Allen bolts, and then you can take that thing out. And that'll be the next thing we do, is remove this bearing assembly. So in my zeal to remove the strut, I kind of forgot to undo this sway bar end link where it connects to the strut. I've already undid it now, but it's a 14 millimeter and a 7 millimeter. The 7 millimeter goes on there to keep it from spinning, but that's a 14. So yeah, it's like, kind of my bad. Should have done that. I'll edit it out so that it's actually, this will be in front of dropping the strut. But yeah, there it is. And just like that, the hub bearing assembly is out. Only thing left now would be to take this spindle and get this spindle out. But before we do that, I want to get this strut out of here. And I just noticed this. I'm so glad that I bought a strut bellow. It's this rubber piece right here to replace. I figured they're like $10. And if you're going to have this thing out, man, it's just better to go ahead and replace it. Like I said, it's just $10. You're gonna tear it anyway, trying to get it off of the old one to try to move it over to your new strut. If you're replacing your struts, if you're not replacing your struts, then this might not be something you even care to do, because you have got to use a spring compressor and take everything apart. And I'll get to that whenever we get to it. We'll cross that bridge whenever we get there. But yeah, I do want to get the strut out of the way, so that'll be the next thing that we do. And that just pops off, and I'm pretty sure that was a 15 millimeter. Yep, 15 millimeter on that. But see, the thing about it is that's going to spin, because you need to hold that top part there. That is a 10 mil on the very top. So actually what we're going to do is we're going to break out, I think it's a 21, not a 21. You know what it is? It is an adjustable. That's going to be an adjustable. It is a 15 millimeter, but with a socket like that, you will not be able to hold it. So we're going to throw the old adjustable on that nut, hold that top part with a 10 mil, and remove that nut. And when we get that nut off the strut, you better be hanging on to it, because it's going to come out. And so, we also ordered new strut mount bushings or bearings or whatever GM called them, because they collapse. And so I got new of those as well to go back in it. So yeah, let me find my adjustable, and that'll be the next thing we do. So now I think it's easier to go ahead and take this bolt and loosen it till it's just about off, and then take this bolt and loosen it till it's just about off. And then when there's just a little bit hanging on there, smack them with a hammer, and that way I'll pop the ball joints out of this spindle. This one is an 18 millimeter, and there's a 6 millimeter Allen down inside of that you can hold to keep it from spinning. It might not spin if the ball joint is got a good, it's good and tight in there, but just in case, there it is. This one right here is a 21 millimeter nut with a 10 millimeter stud that you can grab onto. Like I said, you might not need it. It might just come right on off, especially with the impact. But just in case, there you go. Now there is one on the bottom too that's on this main control arm. That's this big boy right here. It goes all the way over there, comes down to here, and it's through bolted through to the bottom. I think it's easier to go ahead and take the whole control arm out with the spindle, and then just take it out, off the car, so that way you're not working upside down. So now these are pretty much ready to come off. I already got them loose, and so now that one's off. Good thing my new Moog parts come with new nuts. So let's take this one right here off. I already got those out. And then this one over here is an 18 millimeter, and it bolts through right here and goes straight through to this side. And it is kind of hard to see up in there. You can kind of see it right there. There is a little small stud, and that stud is actually yeah, right there you go. That little stud, that nut, it looks like a nut. It's not a nut. It does not spin. If you try to spin it, you will not spin it. You will either strip the nut, you will strip your wrench, or you'll strip the welds and snap it right off. But don't ask me how I know. I know. Just take my advice. That is not going to spin. do it from over here. That's why you pull the inner fender out, so that you can get to that a lot easier. 18 millimeter, there she lay. It's super easy to get out. It's not that hard. Same thing with this one. When we go to take this one out, that, what you see right there, that is not a nut. It looks like a nut. A socket was fit on it. That is not a nut. Do not try to twist that. Over here on this side is where the actual stud is. It's down inside of that little hole, and where that slot is right there, they left you a little spot so you could slide your 18 millimeter with a short extension to screw that out, so you can get that out. So that'll be the next thing we do. We'll remove this here spindle. I say it's all, that's out. Let's see, that one almost come out. Let me smack it one good time, and then it may, yeah, it's loose. It's just hanging on. Okay, now that's out, and then this should, there we go, and there it is on the ground. And now we will spin that off, and we will not put the new control arm in yet, because we're still in the disassembly. We still got to take this part of the control arm out, and then I'm going to work on this tie rod end. This tie rod end is it's not exactly fun. I don't have a new bellow, so I need to remove that bellow. That's what I'm talking about, this right here, this bellow, this boot, this plastic boot. I don't have a new one, so I need to get this one off. But just to get my car to the alignment shop, I kind of need to keep these about the same so that I can drive it down the road, you know, a couple miles to get to the alignment shop. So that'll be the next thing we do, is take this off. Next time you see, just right here will be getting ready to take this tie rods off, inner and outer tie rods. So the next thing we see is that there's this little clip, compression clip, positive tension clip, I'm not sure what you call them, but it's hooked in like right here. It's hooked in like right here, and so we just pull that and move it down. And then there's like a stainless steel, it's like a wire tie you use for, like when I worked at construction, for tying rebar together, but it's stainless steel. And so that is actually looped around the boot right here, and that's what holds that on over here on the rack, the steering rack, the rack and pinion. And so you got to get that out of the way so you can expose the end of the tie rod end. And then once you got that exposed, you can use your instrument of choice, probably not an adjustable, and start walking that thing off. And then once you have that thing all the way off, then next we'll be working on getting the cover off, this cover right here off, so that we can transfer it over to the new tie rod end, which is in 2 pieces. And that requires a little bit of finagling. I'll show you that here in just a minute. One thing I really like about these Moog components is how much beefier they are compared to the factory stuff. I mean, you can just see it in that. I mean, everything is beefier. Not just these tie rod ends. The sway bar end links are beefier. The control arms are beefier. Just everything is just way, way thicker and more stout looking than the original factory components. I just wanted to point that out because I think it's very interesting. So in order to get our boot off, kind of need to get approximately the same length. Like I said, you want it close. You want to take it to the alignment shop so they'll be able to get it dialed in exactly. And so yeah, just going to get it close, and then we'll start working on threading the tie rod end. I guess that would be the outer tie rod end there on the right, and threading that off and taking that nut off so that we can get this boot out of the inner tie rod. And then we'll move it over here to the new one. So I got the tie rod assembly back in, inner and outer, and got this piece on. And to get that connected back over there, I failed to mention that you want to turn the steering wheel out this way to make it easier to get, to unscrew your tie rod. But then once you go to hook this boot back up, you're going to want to turn it back the other way so that you can hook that boot up a lot more easier. Look at that. Alright, let's get it here. Spin it around. It's all the way to the left. Now we're going to bring it back all the way to the right. I mean, from right to left. You know what I mean. Look at that. 146, 260. Hot sitting in front of this halogen light. Golly, 500 watts of heat pumping out on you. Got my fan over there in the corner. That's probably the noise. Got my fan over there. We're redneck. That it does put out some air. Right now, I got all these boxes blocking the air. But yeah, if them boxes weren't there, I'd be feeling right nice. But okay, so now we see that the boot is in more. Now we can get it put on the thing, and we'll get this right here put around it. And the last one that I did, it actually snapped when I went to tie it back together, so I just used it because it was kind of double looped like this, or just come around and it goes around twice, and so I just left it just with one. I don't see, where it's needed to to double loop it. If it makes you feel more comfortable, you can probably buy some straps or get some the metal zip ties, sort of. They're made for headers, or you can just put regular plastic zip ties on. But I don't see where it's that big an issue. So that'll be the next thing we do. That's in, tight, good to go. And now the sway bar end length. Like I said a while ago, man, just look how beefy the Moog is over the factory. That thing it's seriously almost an 1/8 inch thicker diameter than the factory. And so these are Moog. Moog is just, they make really good components for about anything suspension wise, especially General Motors stuff. I didn't mean to get the ones with the grease fittings in them. They actually did cost maybe $1 more. I did not think I ordered the grease fittings. Irregardless, I put like 2 pumps in it with a grease gun. It already had some grease in it, and see, I even got a little bit of grease coming out right there. So you just don't want to, when there's a grease fitting involved in a seal, you don't want to go overboard, because you can really blow a seal out by pumping too much grease in it. I hope 2 pumps is not enough. It did start coming out. They were easy pumps. So now we'll put this in and start putting, we'll put that control arm in, and then I'll have to start working on removing this control arm from that spindle. That'll be the next task. Alright, a little more. If it's a little louder in here, it's because I had to put on a second fan, because it's just very warm and muggy in here. I'm inside my garage, and it's about, it's at night, so it's warm and muggy inside here. Middle of summer, whatever. Here we go. Got this already put on the new control arm, the large one. And I figured it's definitely easier to go ahead and put it on the spindle now. And I went ahead and put the new bearing hub assembly in with the new sensor in it already. Figured this is a little bit easier now at this point. The worst part about these is taking them off, putting them back on is not bad. So taking them off, I did on the car. Putting them back on, I think it's okay to do it with the spindle not on the car. So now just going to take that, put it in there, put that bolt in, and I'm going to run it in sort of tight, but not really tight, because the suspension is going to be all out of whack if you tighten everything up while everything's, you know, the tires are no weight on them and gravity is pulling it down. You're going to want to keep everything, you know, pretty loose until you set the car down. What I'm going to do is set the car down on some ramps like those, and then tighten them up. That way it'll be, the geometry won't be totally out of whack, and it'll put those inserts there right where they need to be, you know. And plus the car is going to be lower now as well, so you know everything's going to be completely different than before as far as pitches and angles and whatnot. That's why we'll definitely have to get a alignment once everything's all said and done. So now put that in, and we'll be back here in just a few seconds. Alright, just to reiterate, this end of the control arm, this end of that control arm, I ran it in tight, and then I pulled it back out about a full turn so that it is loose, so that once I set the car down on some weight and it settles down, then I will tighten it all up. As a matter of fact, I'll probably drive the car around for a couple days, because these new springs may settle a little bit, and I'll probably loosen them back up and tighten them back down again, just to make sure that they're, you know, right where they want to be. And so yeah, these ends, do not tighten them up right now. These ends, this end, like the ball joint ends, yes, tighten those bad boys up as tight as you can get them. And yeah, you definitely want to tighten those up all the way, because them do not get loose. Them don't matter where your suspension angle is. You want those tight. They got to be tight. You want those really good and tight, those loose. And then the next thing, pretty much we're done here, except for, yeah, what's missing right here? Oh yeah, that big strut assembly with the new spring on it, H&R drop spring. Oh, that's the fun part. Yeah, I had to struggle to get the bellow on the other side, but I figured out a different way of doing it that I should have did to begin with. It would have saved me a ton of time. But I'll let you in on that little secret when we get there. But yeah, that's next, because the new strut assembly, there's the old one. The new strut assembly does not come with the rubber there on the bottom or up at the top, and it does not come with this upper steel plate that the strut bushing sits in. So yeah, we'll be pulling that over to the new one. So that'll be the next thing we tackle. Alright, so before I had the spring sitting on here, but now we've got the bellow connected. This one right here, which would be the top of the spring and strut assembly, you want to do that one first. It's much easier to get to out of the, you know, when it's not up inside here, because it's just about impossible to do this one last, because you're having to stretch it and pull it. So do this one first, and then once you have it on there, you can get in here and do this next one. And you're going to want to just use some zip ties to kind of hold it down, hold it together. And so yeah, see, it works just fine. The zip ties will hold it, and once you get it in the car, you'll be good to go. Next is this top part. This is a kind of an important step. You know, you got your spacer. It goes right here, and then this is a new strut bearing bushing. Yeah, it goes together just like this. This is the old one. These do collapse on these cars, from what I hear. This one is all new. It's Moog. As you know, I'm kind of a fan of Moog right now, so then that goes on. Next, and then another of these fantastic little spacers, and then the old nut goes on there, and then that will be tightened down, and we'll tighten that up until it's good and snug. I'm not sure the exact size on this nut. It's probably a 23 or 24 millimeter, and I cannot find my 24 millimeter, so it is actually an adjustable. That's what it is. It is definitely an adjustable. This right here is a 10 millimeter, so we can get a hold on that, and we'll tighten this up, and then we'll remove the spring compressors. And I say these are really good spring compressors. I've had these for a while. They're like, it's got the 2 claws, and these can be a dangerous issue compressing these. Not so much on these lowering springs, but on the factory springs, because there's a lot more tension and they're longer. So definitely be careful. Don't stand over these. Make sure you've got a good, grip on these, and you want to use like an impact or something that you're not really having to pull on them a whole lot, because you want them to clamp, and you want to do them. You want to space them out. Do this side a little bit and that side a little bit, and go back and forth until you've got your spring compressed to where you want it. And removing it's going to be the same thing. So yeah, next thing is tighten this up, stick it in the car. Alright, so now we have the new strut assembly assembled, and we're going to stick this one in there. This goes in first, and we're going to go ahead and put this stick this up through the hole. Right there it is, and that's where all of this stuff sits in there, and that'll stick through, and then this will go right over top of it, hold it down, put a nut on it, and we will run it down snug but not tight until we can get this upper part of this spindle bolted back to it. And once we get that bolted back in, like I said, we'll go ahead and through bolt it, snug it down pretty good. Those holes are they're not oblong, so it's pretty much going to go right in and get tight. There is well, I'll take it back. They're a little larger in the hole, because there's some adjustment like with this, and that's for alignment purposes. But we're going to stick it through, some bolts in it, tighten her up. So we got the strut in, got it nice and tight. Got the bottom bolts in for the spindle. Got the stabilizing bar end link, or sway bar end link, bolted into it. Next thing to do is there's this little shroud that goes around the spindle right there, and so that will go on just like this, sort of, and get the orientation right. Yeah, something like that. I'll move around till the bolt holes line up, and then yeah, once I get that figured out, then I'll get that bolted in. But yeah, that goes on, and then we'll put our rotor on, put a lug nut to hold the rotor on in the right spot, and we'll stick a caliper on. Yep, getting winding down. Alright, so getting really close. Got the caliper bolted back in, ABS line reconnected, yeah, somewhere right here, and got the brake line reattached into the fitting. All of that is all back the way it's supposed to be. Everything is good and tight. The next thing to do really is to put the wheel on it, and I'm going to set it down on a set of ramps, so to put a little load on the suspension and leave it like that until I get the back done. And the back's just changing out shocks and putting new springs in it too. So yeah, in just a few seconds you'll see what it looks like. So I have the car sitting down on ramps, and the ride height is really not where it is, because on these cars, anytime you jack it up and set it down, you actually gotta like back it up and drive it back forward for the suspension to fully settle, and that's even just before you do anything. But what this does give us is the ability to go ahead and tighten down these struts fully, because these were both tight, but now the weight of the car is on them, so we're going to tighten those up, and we're also going to tighten up the control arm bolts and all of that stuff. But yeah, this car is definitely going to need alignment, because I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's definitely canted a little bit, which is kind of to be expected, being it was just lowered about an inch or so. So we can definitely tell it's gone down. But I'm going to drop the car around a little bit before I take it to the alignment shop, so that we'll have some good tire wear and better stance. But so yep, that's the next thing to do, and that'll pretty much be it for this video. I hope this video has been a blessing to you and a help and aid in working on your Pontiac G8 Chevy Caprice PPV. This might even work on the SS. I'm not even sure if the SS is probably altogether different, but hopefully this is will help you out. It's not a very hard job. Basic tools is all you need. I don't have anything really advanced. I like working on cars, and I think that information like this would be beneficial for others that are trying to do, work to their own car. So like I said, I hope this was good for you. God bless you. Thanks for watching.